Great. So just briefly, we're super excited to welcome Aurelia today. Aurelia is currently a software engineer at Accredify.
Hello. Hello.
Accredify is like a secure document sharing signature kind of startup that's based in Singapore. And Aurelia has been working there for about a year. Before working at Accredify, Aurelia went through General Assembly's Bootcamp, one of the best known bootcamps in Singapore. And before that, actually, Aurelia comes from a marketing background. So Aurelia was, she can expand on this, was working as a marketer in a theme park or like a water park in Cebu, of all places, if I'm not wrong. And before that, she studied communications and media studies at NTU. Yeah, so very excited to welcome Aurelia today and for sharing her experience with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I'm super stoked to be here. Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Aurelia. I'm a full stack engineer at Accredify, and I was studying communications and information at NTU. And after graduation, I worked as a marketer in the hospitality industry. So in 2020, COVID-19 hit, and I took the last flight home from Cebu. And while I was on that stay home notice period, right, I got the opportunity to take like a 7-week course for cybersecurity at Hackwagon. And I think I started to code. I started learning how to code as like a means to prepare myself for that course. Yeah. So I think till that point, right, in my life, I never really felt like super excited or like passionate about anything. But I think all of you can kind of understand where I'm coming from, right? Like when you like first code your like, Tic Tac Toe game or whatever and it works, then you're like, oh my God, so exciting. Yeah, for me, it felt like possibilities were really endless, like, and it's like at the tip of your fingertips. So I guess from there, I just never stopped coding. Yeah, then I went, after a while of self-learning and after that course, I decided to enroll myself into General Assembly. And I think 3 weeks before graduation, I got offered like a traineeship at Accredify. And then 2 months after starting the traineeship, I got converted to full-time. And here I am. Yeah, so just let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll be really happy to help you out.
Great. Yeah, maybe we can open up to questions from the group.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. I wanted to ask about your experience in GA because it's 3 months. I'm probably expecting it to be super intensive. And since you were pretty new to coding, I mean, it's been, what was the journey like? What was the 3 months like?
Oh, wow. I just remember like after the bootcamp, I was like so tired. Like, because I mean, it's like people take 4 years to learn whatever they need to learn before they go get a job, right? And then you condense it into 3 months. It's like, I don't know. So I think the curriculum is like, you start at 9, then you end at 6, and then afterwards you have to do like exercises or like finish up your projects. So that was like really tiring. It was like 3 months of super intensive work, but I would say that it did train me to have like stamina to do what I do now. So yeah, I don't regret it at all. Yeah.
Hi Aurelia, this is Sam.
Hello.
Could you describe like what it was like when you first started the apprenticeship? Like what projects did they what projects did your managers expect you to do? And what was the experience like?
Okay, I think it would be helpful for me to provide some like background as to what Accredify does, so you have a better understanding of what I did during my traineeship and then what I do now when I'm full-time. So yeah, like Kai said, right, Accredify is a software as a service firm that creates, issues and verifies digital documents. So currently, I think we are serving clients in 8 different markets worldwide. And the documents that we have issued have been verified close to 6 million times this past year. So our first vertical would be the education industry. So I think now if you graduate from like SMU, NTU, NTUC Learning Hub, let me think what else, LaSalle, NUS, you'll have this, instead of like I'm not sure if you'll still get the physical like degree transcript, but you'll get this digital document which is verifiable. And the second vertical that we went into is the healthcare space. So when the pandemic hit Singapore last year, right, we ventured into this industry to issue verifiable COVID-19 test results. And we created a schema known as the health certs alongside MOH and GovTech to provide a standardized template for COVID-19 swab results. So when I first started, we were in that in-between phase. I think I started when we were in November. So my traineeship was November and December. I spent my time in November mostly picking up like small tickets, learning the language because I had never touched that before. And it's super different when you're doing like your personal projects and when you're dealing with an industry grade like code base, especially when there's like proper like development pipeline and deployment practices. So it was more like familiarizing myself with that. And I also got started with a project, which is, it's kind of like, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this. Okay, maybe not. It was like just a like a mini feature inside the dashboard. Yeah. So I think that in the first 2 months I had a lot of like hand holding, I would say, but not too much because I still had to figure out things by myself. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Nice. You were saying that you had to learn a new language for the first time. What language was that?
Yeah.
And was it, how different was it to what you learned in your bootcamp?
So in Accredify, we have a modified LAMP stack. So it's Linux, Nginx, MySQL, and PHP. So I had to learn PHP for the first time. And honestly, it's after picking up your first and second language, right? Your third and onwards is not that difficult lah. Like take a few weeks, then the syntax is a little bit different, but all in all, like it does the same thing. So the concepts are the same. Yeah.
I was wondering how you got this apprenticeship from like how did this like land in your lap? Did you like go and like for it?
Not well, I didn't actually interview for it lah. I mean I'm like super lucky, but I got connected with the CTO of Accredify and I'm during my bootcamp, and then like he was really nice, and like I would send him my projects and stuff like that, and then he would comment on it and like tell me how I can improve. And I don't know, he just offered me this traineeship, and it was before I even applied for anything else. So but I thought like, you know what, like I'm just gonna go for it because for me, when I was looking for a job, like my two non-negotiables were like, okay, I want somewhere with a great culture, and somewhere, okay, maybe three non-negotiables. Somewhere with a great culture, somewhere with good mentorship and good learning opportunities, and a product that I believe in. So I just decided to go for it, and yeah.
All right. Was there an interview process at all for you? What was it like?
I didn't really have an interview process. I just met the whole team. I didn't really go through like the whole technical interview part of things, but yeah. I think because it's like a traineeship, right? So if after the 2 months I wasn't up to standard, like, no hard feelings lah. But thankfully I got converted. Yeah.
Sounds like the traineeship and the CTO reviewing your code was the interview.
Yes.
Right. Nice.
Oh, sounds like very pleasant. Very pleasant process. I was just like, wow. I wish.
So that's the importance of networking. Because referrals are really powerful, right? Like if you just co-apply, the chances of you getting the job versus like if you know somebody on the inside, it's like very different. Yeah.
Did you do anything proactively to connect with the CTO or other software engineers while you were doing the course?
Well, yeah. I think I reached out to a few people on LinkedIn, and then I didn't really know the CTO like personally. It was through a mutual friend, and then like it came out in conversation, and then I just said like, hey, can I pick your mind a little bit? And I think at that point I didn't know how busy he was. And now looking back, I feel a bit bad, but it got me to where I am today. So like I think it's a good move to do that.
I guess
So,
go ahead.
well, you can go first.
Oh no, it's okay. I went many times. I will go
No,
again.
no, you just finish the sentence.
Yeah.
All right,
you go.
Okay. All right, you finish first.
Okay, I was going to ask, like, before you got the apprenticeship, right? And when you do your last month in jail or so, right? Did you already know what sort of software engineer you wanted to be in, what industry? That sort of thing,
Okay. Yeah, like I really thought about that. And I think a lot of like bootcamp graduates think about like what kind of engineer they want to be. But I think one advice that I can give you guys is like not to pigeonhole yourself too quickly. When I first started, I thought that okay, I'm gonna be a front-end engineer because like my background is in like media and stuff. Maybe I like the design portion of it. But I was so wrong. Because right now, even though I'm full stack, right, like I am primarily backend. And I think that maybe you'll be really scared, like, backend is for like people who like have CS degree, like they know like the ins and outs of how the server talks to the whatever. But actually, you'll be surprised that it's not as difficult as you think, and front end is not as easy as you think either. Yeah. So that's your first question, right? And then the second one is the industry. So just now I was saying like when my three non-negotiables, right, when it came to a job, I knew that okay, I wanted to work at a startup because I wanted to be exposed to the breadth of software engineering, right? I wanted to know from like the inception to like the final product. I didn't want to be just working on like one feature like all the time. I wanted to be exposed. So that was one thing. And the second thing was I kind of knew that I wanted to work in a company where the product is really adding value to society. So I knew that I didn't want to work in. So there's like two types of products, right? One is like a painkiller, it's like necessary, and then there's like the vitamin, which is like good to have. I wanted to work at the painkiller companies. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I like when you say you want to work with a startup to get the breadth of the entire product.
Something you're saying earlier. So you were saying backend may not be as hard as you think, and front end may not be as easy as you think.
Yeah.
Could you maybe expand a little bit on that? Like why? What makes backend simpler than you initially thought, and what makes front end more complex than what you initially thought?
Maybe it's a personal thing because okay, so for backend, right? In my own experience, it's like when you're designing APIs, or just generally both external APIs and internal APIs, like for your own endpoints and for external parties to use. I think that the pattern of thought is very similar. Like you manipulate the data or you need to put in like the middleware, but it's generally like the same steps. But for front end, like I think it's deceivingly it's not, it's not difficult, but it's just not as simple as you would think it is, because there's a lot of like factors that come into play, and how the browser interacts with your front end framework. That's not easy as well.
What are some of those factors you're saying that could be surprising or difficult? You're saying that there are some factors on the front end that come into play, right? What are some of those factors?
Okay, let me think. What front end frameworks do you guys learn at Rocket Academy?
Most of the work we do on the front is in React, right, Akira? Is there any? I mean, we use EJS to generate HTML pages, but we also use the second half of the course a lot of React.
Well, I would say that, okay, for example, in Accredify, right, we use React as well, but that is a piece of code that so we have two main arms of our team. One is like the dashboard, which is it's just for the clients and stuff, and then one is the decentralized renderer. So the decentralized renderer is built on React, and it is meant to be a piece of code, right, that you can put into other, like for example SMU. If you go to like www.smu.edu.sg/verify, you'll be able to see that verifier there. So in terms of use case, that's how we use it. And I think that is quite difficult because of the way that we have to interact with, we have to make the component interact with like GovTech's open source schema, right? So you have to continually maintain it such that, because when they have updates, you have to update your renderer as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
What's the proportion of back-end engineers to front-end engineers?
I don't really think we have like that front end / back end distinction. Like no one is really like pigeonholed as just a front end or just a back end. I think we are mostly like jack of all trades.
But I would imagine probably there's more backend work at Accredify, right? Because it's a document document verification, right? It's a lot of this kind of like, what do you call it? Authentication and encryption, that kind of making sure that it's the right authentic and verifiable kind of thing. Yeah.
I heard you use the word decentralized, and I might be speaking on my ass here, but does it have anything to do with like blockchain technology and all this thing?
You're right. Actually, we built. So I don't know if I should go into like detail about it, but you guys know how like blockchain works, right? Like how the information on the blockchain is immutable. So like you can't change it. So how we do things at Accredify is we upload information into the blockchain. So in that sense, it's decentralized. It's not like, okay, I don't know, NTU's database gets hacked and then everyone's private and personal information gets changed or something. That will never happen. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Hi, Aurelia. Joe here. Thanks for joining us. I think I kind of connect with you because I'm from marketing background. So yeah, so I have a question for you. If in hypothetical world, if you had to relive your journey from self-learning bootcamp to getting your first job, what would you do different today?
What would I do differently? I guess I would be less tough on myself. So, graduating from a bootcamp, right, you may feel a little bit like overwhelmed or like inferior to like your peers who have a CS degree. But I really do believe that, I mean, now in retrospect, I believe that your previous experience gives you like unique insight as to how to approach problems. So for myself, I think an example that I would give is, so my experience in marketing and in comms, it really helped me like KYC, like know your customer. So, and I think when I was in uni, we did like a final year project. It's like a public communications campaign, and you have to like break the problem down essentially. So you have like a problem statement, like maybe you need to increase financial literacy in teams. So how do you do that? And I think another thing that having a marketing and comms background, another advantage that I got was I was able to communicate my ideas effectively. And I think you'll be surprised, like I would say like 40% of my work day is meetings and then like 60% is coding. So that element of communication and like being clear in the things that you say and the ideas that you bring across, that's really important. Yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah, I don't
Okay, so
think.
it's
Yeah. So I wouldn't be so hard on myself.
spot on. Yeah, I think I need to cut some slack for myself. Cool.
No,
Okay.
work harder.
Yeah, no, but work harder.
Cool, makes sense. So what I hear from what you said is that like our previous experience gonna help us in the career change.
Yeah.
Coming from the marketing background. Awesome. Thanks a lot. That helps.
Aurelia, can you expand on that a little bit? You're saying so 40% of your meeting days are meetings, and communication is super important. Are there any specific parts of communication that are important? Is it mostly about naming and commenting in your code, or is it like do you have to like write these design documents, or is it like communicating with Slack, or like what part of the communication is most important? Or is it giving speeches? Like, are you giving speeches to your team? Yeah.
I would say all of the above because I am also okay. So it's really important that you communicate. Okay, firstly, your variable naming, your function naming needs to be like clear. Your commenting and your documentation needs to be clear because you're working in a huge code base. Like you don't know how you need to know, and other people need to know how your code interacts with the rest of the ecosystem, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is meetings, right? So, as a software engineer, I don't think you're working in silos. You're always working with either a team or even if you're not working in a team, and you're the only person in charge of your feature, you definitely still need to talk to the BD people, like the business development team, and gather requirements there. So being able to talk to them effectively, that's really important. And the third thing is in meetings, right? So actually, I don't only do out features and face my computer the whole day. I actually also join in client meetings. So sometimes like when we have API integrations, like I'll be there to real time assess and gather requirements, go back to the APIs, come back, demo, and guide our third party applications or our partners how to use it. So that whole process requires a lot of it's like you never really understand something until you are like able to explain it and teach it to someone else, right? So yeah.
Nice. Everyone should be a section leader. Just saying.
Hi, Aurelia. Yeah, Tonghua here. So you were saying that mentorship is an important factor that you consider when you join. So just wondering, how do they do this mentorship in Accredify? Or yeah, and what I mean, how have you benefited from it so far?
Okay, so I think a few things to note is that when you join a startup, right? Your I don't think your hand is going to be held like you really have to be independent and take charge of your own learning. But I would say, I would say that Accredify, right? The leaders, my managers, they really tread the line well between like giving you the autonomy to do the feature the way you see fit, and also giving you the resources to set you up for success. So I think one example that I can give is so just now when as I was mentioning, when we went to the healthcare industry, right? That code incided with the time that I first got converted. So I was given the opportunity to take charge of the onboarding process for new clients in the healthcare scene. And prior to this, onboarding our clients was really quite a manual process lah, because they need a lot of customization in terms of like access control, in terms of configuring the wallets on the blockchain. So I was given like a month-ish to complete this project, but in February this year, I think MOH sprung a surprise. And then they were like, okay, all the clinics is mandatory to issue their verifiable documents. So this cut my deadline by quite a bit. And but for me, I felt like my managers did a really good job in giving me, like trusting me firstly to handle such an important feature. And also like we did like code reviews and like pair programming so that like I wouldn't be like an island by myself. So I think from this process, right, of like trial by fire, I think I really learned a lot. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So actually, on a related question, how should a new software engineer get up to speed when joining a new company or a new team? For instance, is it a lot of just grinding at trying to read and stare at the code base every day, or is it like just like watching what your colleagues do and following them? Truth is, I have no idea because yeah.
I don't think that I think you learn best when you're doing, right? So you would probably, at a good company, they will probably give you a chance to work with the code base, like try to do some minor bug fixes, and from there you will understand like how the code works. That's one thing. And the second thing is, I think learning how to ask questions also is like a skill. So for example, if you ask someone like, I don't know how to do this, versus like, okay, like I've tried this and this, and I think that the issue is this, but could you like take a look at my code and see maybe I can pick your brain as to like what do you think is wrong. I think the latter is like a lot more effective, and it shows that you take charge of your own learning. And it shows your desire to contribute as well. Yeah.
Hi Aurelia, Jerome here. Thanks for your time. Yeah. So I was just wondering, because you were saying that you're doing both like front end and back end, and then you also currently focus more on back end. So how do you like is there like a balance on what you focus on? I mean, I assume it really depends on each project as well, but because software engineering in a way is also and you get to decide like how much focus you want to put on either end, right? Like I mean, the front end can always be nicer, and the back end can always be neater in terms of how the code is written. So generally, like how do you focus your time on each? Like front end, for example, front end you get the base, you can move on already. Or back end, as long as the data is coming through, you can move on already. I mean, also because like you wanna maximize your day also. So I'm just wondering how you like. Is there even a balance, or do you see like it's one and the same?
I think that it's equally important, because in the front end, you definitely have to firstly make sure things that look proper and is within the design guidelines. And the second thing is the back end, like you have not only make sure like it works, but is it efficient? Does it pass all your tests? like, yeah, and that's another thing. Testing is really important. So like, does your code behave in the way that it's supposed to? I think testing is really important.
Yeah, I didn't know there were. So when you mentioned about guidelines, I think that was interesting. I never really heard that before. So yeah, I think kind of makes sense. Like on the balancing. Like I mean, you can hit the requirements, but it's always good to. I mean, it's like a project lah. Until you feel like sure or satisfied, then that's yeah. Thanks.
Wait, I didn't catch that part about the guidelines. So you're saying that there are guidelines for?
Yeah. So we have like a UX design. We have a UX team, UX and product team. They'll come up with the design on Figma, and then you have to make sure that it complies with that. Yeah.
And so you're saying testing is super important, and I know that at many boot camps, because of the short duration of boot camp, there's not that much time to learn best practices in terms of automated testing, continuous integration, these kinds of common testing practices. What was your learning journey like in sort of learning how to test code effectively?
Okay, so definitely the learning curve was quite steep. But I would say you have to just flip your mindset. So instead of when you are given like a task to do, like just straight away like coding it or like writing out the comments and coding it, you should think of like some tests that you can write for it. So for instance, if you create an API that is supposed to create some accounts, for example, right? What are the failing test cases and what are the passing test cases? Yeah. It's kind of like English, right? When you're writing tests. And yeah, then once you do that, once you think of all the edge cases, it'll be much easier to code as well.
I have a question about hi Aurelia. I have a question about testing. So I'm wondering, for testing, do you test as you code or do you code then test? Or do you plan the test first, then you write your code? Or is it just like afterwards, before you launch, you run a bunch of tests?
Okay, so I would think of the test first and then write the code, and then I would write the unit test and the feature test. Yeah. So unit test, it just tests it in silos, and then feature is like as a whole, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
To follow up on the test question. So when you design the test, and you said that this comes in the process first, then comes the pseudo coding and the coding. So do you also consider corner cases in the very beginning, or this is something just after you are running your code, it comes up and then you fix it?
Then I think it would be good if you can list down all the corner cases, but I think in reality, that doesn't happen. Like sometimes when you're halfway coding, then you think, oh no, like what if this happens? Then so it's a continuous process, I would say.
Cool. Thanks.
What's your opinion on this concept of test-driven development? And so it seems like the process at where you're working now is that there's kind of like, okay, I'll think of the test, but I'll build the feature first, and then I'll write the test afterward. But at some other companies, they're very strict about test-driven development, where like you have to write the test first and then write the feature. Do you have any opinions on the pros and cons of those?
I don't think there's any right answer. Like, so when I first started, we actually didn't really have super like comprehensive tests, and like the engineers didn't really have to write their own tests either. So but as the company like grew bigger and bigger, like that became really important. If not, like every time we push to production, like there's 500 errors everywhere. And so I think that definitely if you have test TDD, right, it's really good, but it also depends on the company size and like how fast you need to pivot. Sometimes, for example, as I was saying, like the COVID-19 situation is like so quickly evolving. sometimes you don't have the luxury of thinking of the test and then writing the test and making it like super like efficient and clean, and sometimes you just need to push it out. So it really, but I think now that we're growing bigger and we have like more and more resources, this is something that we are implementing. Yeah.
Thanks.
What's your day-to-day like? I mean, you shared already like you're doing backend, frontend, but just wondering like because you have, I mean, usually it's 9 to 6, but generally, let's say you have like a block of time and you finish the work that you feel needed to do, or you hit the requirements or whatever. Generally, like how do you spend the rest of the time? Do you like research new things, or what's there to do actually?
Okay, so maybe I'll just tell you like what you typically do in a day. So every day in the morning at 9 a.m. we have so working hours is from 9 to 6. Yeah, you're right. And a typical day starts with a stand-up meeting at 9. Last time this used to be only for the tech team, but I think with work from home, the entire company joins in. So usually you just say like what you did yesterday, what you're doing today, and any blockers that you have. And I actually quite enjoy stand up because it helps me like focus my my day, like what I have to complete. And then your question as to what I spend my free time doing.
Meaning like you've completed today's work and yesterday's work and tomorrow's work. If ever reaches that case.
I don't
Oh.
I haven't gotten that far.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But I would say that when I do have free time, like so now I'm like studying for my AWS certificate. Yeah, the basic one. Yeah, and other than that, I don't really have that much free time.
Actually, one last question, because you were talking about the front-end frameworks earlier, front-end stuff earlier. What's the process of like, let's say you're using a certain library and you want to introduce something new, maybe that's something you discovered. Like what's the process of introducing that to the company? Do you like talk to your team lead to say that I want to try this, or do you have to like use like, do the guidelines and force you to use like material, like let's say Bootstrap or Material or whatever front-end frameworks, or do they let you have like some form of autonomy like you mentioned earlier?
I would say that like the hierarchy at Accredify is really flat. So if you want anything, you literally just like, okay, when we're in the office, you'll be like, hey, like, can I do this? And then everyone will like sit down and like we have a chat about this, like quite informal. So I guess that's like a good thing that, like the things that you do have, the things that you do are put into play really quickly if they are deemed effective. So I think that we are still at a stage where things are really flexible. So for instance, like we just had like a new engineer come in, like I think 2 months ago, and then he was saying, he wanted to implement like Vue on our dashboard. So like he's like doing it now. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Thanks. And after that, is there like some form of documentation? Because like maybe others don't really know Vue, or it's like then after like and everybody has to pick up Vue because of what's how do your knowledge share maybe?
So we have like a masterclass kind of thing. So like this person will prepare maybe some like test cases, not test cases, like use cases. When do I change a certain element into a Vue component? How do I feed the data in? Yeah, and we'll all learn and pick up ourselves and slowly implement.
Thanks. Yeah, makes sense.
When do those master classes happen? Is it like just once a week? There's like a tech talk, or is it just ad hoc? Like, okay, guys, I implement this new technology. Come and learn.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Basically.
Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Michelle. Sorry. I just want to ask, what do you find most appealing about software engineering?
Okay. When I first started, like I just thought it was really cool. Like I thought coding was really cool. But I think as I continue, I realized that you can really impact a lot of people with the things that you do. And it's really it's really industry agnostic. So you can make a positive impact in any way you want to choose lah. And the second thing that I really like about coding and programming is that before I started this whole journey, I always thought, okay, like programmers like have to be really good at math, like kind of nerdy. But I mean that's so not true. Like it's super creative, and I really enjoy the aspect of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's a very deep and awesome question. Yeah. Aurelia, earlier you were mentioning that you are currently studying for AWS certificate. Could you just share more about what was the motivation for doing this AWS certificate, and how prepared were you for infrastructure or DevOps kind of cloud kind of work after your bootcamp, and how important is it, and how are you going about learning?
Well, there's a lot of questions packed into one. So I'm just taking the cloud practitioner because firstly, we are using AWS at Accredify, and I think it would be beneficial for me. The second thing is how prepared was I? I was not prepared, or like the only deployment I knew was maybe like Heroku or something. But like as you scale, I don't think I think it's not feasible for large companies to use Heroku, because like the pricing tiers are like really expensive. So yeah, and also I guess it's free for me to take the AWS certification at Accredify. Yeah. And I think it's important to continually like improve yourself also.
How important is it for your kind of regular developers, right? Like full stack engineers to know this kind of infrastructure work? Because I know at some companies they have dedicated cloud or infrastructure teams, right? Maybe it's like DevOps or DevSecOps, that kind of thing. So how important is it for product engineers like yourself to understand the cloud and that kind of infrastructure?
I don't think it's very important, to be honest. I think for me, that decision was made. I think it was more of like a personal decision. Yeah.
And do you have to engage with AWS in your day-to-day work when you are building the products, or is that something, it's kind of like there's an infrastructure team and those guys handle the cloud kind of work, and then the product?
Yeah, so the pipeline is already built, but we don't really have to interact with it.
Okay, so there's some kind of cloud data pipeline that's separate from the kind of product engineering that happens. Okay, cool.
Hi, Aurelia.
Hello.
You mentioned earlier that your past experience kind of give you insights into your work, right? How has the cybersecurity thing that you learned at Hackwagon has it given you any insights?
Yeah, I would say so, because I mean it was like a 7-week course, but it's not like Rocket Academy, or it's not like GA where you have to go in every day. It was more like a once a week, I think like 4 hours kind of thing. So I'm like far from an expert, but at least like you kind of understand like how things work, how like XSS injections and I don't know, attacks, and like SQL injections, like how do you code in a way that prevents these things, even though like the framework, your backend framework would most likely take care of it for you, but having that understanding is important. So just to give you an example, for example, if you want to have like an autofill function in your form, and you have like a drop down. So when you change the drop down, it will autofill the forms properly, right? But like you shouldn't send over like that whole chunk of like that whole like chunk of like, oh, the ID of the person and the name, it should be like after you select it, then you have like a on change handler that will send an AJAX request and autofill the forms that way, because you don't want information to be easily accessible, like sensitive information to be easily accessible from a browser, right? So things like that, like changing your mindset, I think it was beneficial in that way. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, Aurelia, so as we know, technology is always changing. Is there any particular interest group or website that you go to keep yourself updated and that you recommend to us?
Interest group.
To keep yourself updated with what's changing and all that. What's the new stuff?
I think there's this newsletter. Okay, firstly, I follow like the Reddit, the subreddits, a lot of them, and I really like watching like YouTube videos. So like I have like I don't know if you guys know, like let me go and see my subscriber list now. Yeah, but I that was one thing that I wanted to mention, is that, you know, YouTube is like really a great resource. I think a lot of the things that I didn't know, I think I owe a lot of my career to creators on YouTube for giving like free information. Other than that, I think I really like the website dev.2to. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm curious as to have you developed any strategies in reading documentation, since you like videos like me. I also really like videos, but sometimes I cannot find, then I have to read the documentation. I'm like, oh my goodness. That's like, I'm just wondering whether like, yeah, it's a career.
Sorry, could you repeat your question again?
If you, in your current role now, right, you have to go through large amounts of documentation, and if
definitely,
so, what are your strategies to cope with like vast amount of like,
you know, like I think that reading documentation is like really like it's quite hard, but you know, it's really worth it. You should definitely read the documentation, because not every there's like a wealth of information for you there, and like code samples, and even if you just copy and paste, right, like there's like explanation as to like how it works, and I think it's a super valuable resource. And as to how I cope with it, I don't think I should just straight up read the documentation like it's a book. It's more like, you know, you have to, maybe you skim through it, you just like read and understand like what are the various like features, and then you when you're implementing like functions, and you need like certain things, like for example for Stripe, you want to have like a webhook to receive events, then you read then you go in depth as to like how it works and how you should implement this. Yeah.
curious as to what backend framework you guys are using.
Oh, you're using Laravel.
Laravel is the expressive PHP, I think.
In your GA, what were you using?
In GA, it was like Node and Django. Yeah.
I had a question.
Okay.
I was wondering what thing you found maybe shocking, or the most challenging, or the thing furthest from your bootcamp coding experience that you had to do when you started work. Maybe not necessarily technical, but the thing that was most surprising, that maybe you felt the least prepared for, or that was most challenging.
I would say that it was a bit overwhelming at the start, like to see like such a like huge like dashboard, like such a huge repository, right? Like if you want to change like even one like CSS, it's like I don't even know where for me when I first started, like I don't even know where to begin. I don't know. Yeah, it was quite overwhelming. But and the second thing was how important writing readable code is. So not only like your colleagues will understand, but even you yourself, when you go back, like do you understand what you're writing? Yeah. Yeah.
And what was there any specific thing that was more overwhelming? Like you said, because I guess you had to learn a new language and then a new framework and then a large amount of code. Was there one particular thing that was the biggest like hurdle to I guess that's the goal to be to actually contribute something that would be on the website?
I would say probably like how extensive the code base is. Yeah. But and I mean in a way it's good because a lot of the things that you want to implement has probably been implemented already. So if you know how to look for it, you can find like examples as to how you should code up this feature. Yeah.
Is there an expectation of you, like to, okay, so you go in a company, you saw this huge code base that made you feel like overwhelmed. And then was there like some sort of like, okay, you have to get this, like you have to understand this within a week?
I think the expectation was like self-imposed. Yeah, I don't think that you know, like as a career switcher or like a or like even a junior software engineer, I don't think like the expectation is there that like you have to know everything, but it's more like the attitude that you have. I think so like owning like that task that you have to do like from start to finish, following up with the relevant people, asking people questions in the way that is effective, like I mentioned just now. Yeah, I think those things are more important than like just understanding that code base in a week. Yeah.
Awesome. And Aurelia, you're talking about the importance of readable code. Like what goes into making code readable in your perspective?
I think good comments, good documentation, and good naming conventions. Yeah. So like, for example, in Laravel, you have like blades, right? So those are like the view files, like VIEW. So you don't like name it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like like I did on my first week. Like you should name it like readable names, so people who work, anyone can jump onto your code and help you out with it.
Is there a system at the company for documentation besides comments?
I think we're starting to implement open API, for our external but I'm not so sure about I think we're hiring DevOps soon.
I mean, like when you started out, I guess, was there anything else for you to read about the code base besides the comments?
Okay, not really. Yeah, I just had to like find my way in the dark.
So we're talking about, go on. Yeah, go on.
A quick question. Were you worried when you started out that what if you end up messing up the code base sort of thing? Like, I always have this question that what if you mess up something? It feels like such a big thing, you know? Is there a possibility of you going to mess up the existing features and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I okay, when you first start out, I don't think that the chance is that high, just because the tickets that you would do wouldn't have that much of an impact. But yeah, that's why you have like tests in place, right? It's like a guarantee that your code will work in the way that it's expected to work. So yeah, you shouldn't feel so afraid. And there's like code reviews and like automated testing that you have to pass as well before like your code gets pushed up. And it's not like it's like straight to production, right? There's like a UAT environment, and then like you can check like the error logs to see if anything went wrong. So yeah, you don't have to worry too much about it.
That's good to know.
I have a question about how you start reading the code base, because I would assume like since you're working in a company, then each file will be referencing many different files. So when you first start having to understand the code base, like how do you go about doing so?
I
Do you like just pick any place and you start from there that you try?
Oh no. So for example, like if you have to add in a feature, you will naturally be focused on one aspect of the code base, right? So for example, if you're dealing with billing, then you will look at all the stuff that's to do with billing, like the Stripe stuff, or like all the invoices, or the plans that you have to look through. But you wouldn't necessarily look at other parts of the code base. So slowly getting familiarized in each segment, I guess is what I did. Yeah.
We're talking about naming conventions being important. What are some of the naming conventions that you guys use at the company? Is it anything that's kind of a like global standard, or is it something that's more of just a company standard? And what standards are there for naming conventions?
So for instance, like everything has to like for example, functions, they have to have like underscores. Like variable names are supposed to be they are supposed to be like camel case. What else were you asking?
Oh, like is it a global thing or is it just a company specific thing?
I think it's a company specific thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and it's not about the specific words, then maybe it's more just about like the casing of the variables.
I would say definitely the words as well, but I don't know, it is just like the function has to not be too generic. So it has to make sense to other people. Yeah. So like it's like not submit form, like submit form can mean a lot of things. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Unfortunately, I think we're running short of time, and so I think we'll need to wrap up a little bit here. But before we go, maybe we can ask you one last question, Aurelia, which is for everyone here who's going through the bootcamp and making the career switch, jumping into the tech industry for the first time. Would you have any general advice for the group on how best they can go about their journey?
I would say that when I would say that it's a very brave thing that all of you guys are doing. Like I've been there, it's like super scary, right? Like it's very uncertain. But I think my best piece of advice is to treat everything like a learning experience. So from job hunting to like starting your new job, I think things are definitely going to be difficult, but it's important to keep having fun, like learn new stuff that makes you excited, keep working on like projects, like frameworks, languages, certificates. And when somebody asks you, right, like what are you doing now? Like you should have like, a good answer. Yeah. And another thing is I think it's important to, when you're faced with like a problem that you can't solve, take a break, like don't beat yourself up for too much, and try to like voice out your problem. So like it doesn't have to be to someone else, it can be like to yourself, or I have a debugging duck here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so like I talk to this guy when I don't know what's my problem, and every time after you voice it out, right, you'll be able to like spot the incongruencies like easily. So that's my biggest tips, I guess. Yeah.
That's amazing. Awesome. Okay.
Oh, nice. Not get a
We'll
duck.
wrap.
That's not.
Yeah, we should, Akira, we should give out ducks. Rocket, ducks. I don't know. Rockets? I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much, Aurelia. That was
Thank you
that was
for
really
having
great.
me.
And I think everyone took away a lot from this session. Thank you so much.